Is bad sex better than no sex? You tell me. So welcome back to Sis N Giggles podcast. I'm your host, Keisha, and this is
Karen.
And today we're going to be talking about sex.
I'm cringing a little bit.
Are you?
Yeah. My mama probably gonna watch this.
Girl, your mama gonna be watching this. Hey, mama.
Hey, girl.
But before we get into it, can you tell me what we have in front of us today?
So we have some blackened catfish and some garlic potatoes.
And where can they find this recipe?
They can find this recipe on our Patreon. We will put the information below. But you can look us up on Patreon, Sis N Giggles podcast, and subscribe to get recipes, behind the scenes, and more.
And bonus episodes.
We got some fun bonus episodes coming.
All right. So,
taste this? I am kind of hungry, so
you've been saying it. All right, you guys. So we are going to be talking about sex. So if you were here for our first episode, we talked about the viral TikTok lesion situation that I married. Okay, so I watched all 50 or so. Karen, hopefully you finished it by now, but that's neither here nor there. So if you want to watch, you guys can go back and look at our first episode. But we are going to be talking about just kind of recapping. So, she moved in with the guy after 2 weeks of knowing him because of quarantine. So as an adult, we know they had some going around. Like they were doing the grown up.
I mean, she got pregnant like less than 2 months after her.
Was it 2 months? I don't want to put no time frame on it, but she got pregnant. But anyway,
she got pregnant.
So we want to talk about sex, of course. So when is too soon to have sex with somebody, right? You're moving them in your house. When is too soon to have sex? Like,
I ain't moving nobody in my house after 2
Okay, well, in general.
You know what? Actually, I can't say that.
You can't say that. Okay. You can't. Because you have to consummate your marriage. Stop. But okay, so when is too soon? Is there a too soon? I've seen some people say, if the vibe is right on the first day, we smash it. And no shame, to each his own, do what you want. I know back in the gap, people were like, oh my God, Joan, 3 months, we have to wait 3 months. Let's just be real, 3 months is a long time.
Like feeling somebody like
if you're feeling somebody like that, if the chemistry is there. I know as we get older as females, our sex drive is like going through the roof. But what are your thoughts on time frame?
I think honestly the time frame has to I don't think there's one time frame. Right? It's hard for me to answer that because you can meet somebody, have sex with them, and I hear stories about people ending up married, that ends up being their husband, and we had sex on the first night. And then I've heard stories of we waited till we were married, and now we not married no more. So I don't know. I don't think there's a too soon per se, I don't think there's a specific timeline. I think it varies with every situation. Now I will say, is it smart to just be out there willy-nilly and you just having sex with everybody immediately? I don't think that's smart because I believe in the exchange of energies.
Yes.
Again, we talked about in our first episode, you meet people's representatives and you can just end up in bad situations. But I'm not judging anybody either if they have sex early.
So I don't think there's a time frame. I feel like if you're consenting adults and you feel like that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. Now, I do feel like the times have changed a lot, and a lot of older people oh my God, you have to wait. I need to know everything about this person. Sometimes it's just our animalistic nature, the pheromones.
Yes.
But at the same time, I do understand back then waiting because you are giving that person a piece of you, right? And you can never get that back. You can't get that back. And if you have sex with that person, then you're having sex with basically everybody they have sex with. So be mindful of that as well. But I'm not gonna wait until I'm married to have sex with somebody. What if we're not sexually compatible? Like that's a big thing. Like I might like something some way and you not doing it. And there have been a lot of times I've had conversations with older guys that's like, my wife is my wife and she can only do certain things, but I'm gonna go out and cheat on my wife and do this because that's not, my wife isn't supposed to do that. Like, what are we doing? Like that mindset is crazy to me. Like, but this is your wife.
A lot of, especially older men.
Yeah, I see that in a lot of older men.
Like there are a lot of older men that I feel like have that mentality. Like they think that it's fine for them to go out there and be like, for lack of a better term, hoes. And the woman is just supposed to be like, you're only supposed to have slept with one man your entire life.
Right, like,
boy,
I'm holding you to the same standard. Now,
go away.
Look. Look. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Like some people hold women to like this perfect, like, oh my God, you're the one, you only had sex with me, blah, blah, blah. And that turns go into like when people ask you about your body count.
Yeah.
Does it matter? Like why? Why does it matter? If like, what's your body count? Like you tell me, I'm gonna tell you because I could easily lie.
Yeah.
And I hate to be like, oh, I can feel. No, you can't. They have people that push out quadruplets. And that thing go back together. So what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? And nowadays people can get like the vaginal rejuvenation.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
And then if your number is higher than what they're expected, they feel like you a hoe. But it's like, no, I just had a whole phase at one point in time, or I just dated a guy and it didn't work, and 6 months later I dated another guy, and then a year later I dated another guy. Just because you have a low number doesn't mean anything else, because you could have two and could be doing all that person that you had this with. So like,
right.
Does it matter? Doesn't matter.
Not really. Like, and again, not saying just be out there
just
wilding because you don't know.
Be safe.
Yeah. You don't know, you don't know people, the energies that they carry. You don't know like who they've been dealing with and stuff. But I also don't judge either, I guess, if like that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned a whole phase. Have you ever had a whole phase?
Oh man. So, okay, I didn't date in high school. Mm-hmm. Really, I didn't date in high school. I think I was just more of the sheltered person. In college, my sister was more like my mom.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird. Like, she didn't like, you can't date, but it was more like, let me see who you date. And I respect that because that's what you're supposed to do. I'm you, my little sister, you're supposed to watch out for me. So it necessarily wasn't a whole phase. I had like 2 or 3 boyfriends, right? And then I got into a serious relationship. But the 2 people that I dated, that third person I necessarily wasn't dating, but he was like my sneaky link.
Yeah.
So between high school graduation and my sophomore year in college, I guess you can call that a whole phase. It was like 3 or 4 people, so it wasn't something like serious. And then after I got out of a serious relationship, I went back to the guy that I was with in college, right? My sneaky link. And then I got into a serious relationship. Well, I dated 2 guys and then I got into another serious relationship. So it wasn't like necessarily like I was out here doing one night stands and doing all this and exploring like, But I would like to say that the people that I was with, the sexual compatibility was there.
Yeah.
So I had experience. We figured out what we liked, what we didn't like, and we tweaked things, because if you can't be open with your sexual partner, then y'all shouldn't be having sex.
Yeah.
So, what about your whole phase?
I don't think I really had one.
Oh man,
I know.
Sometimes
I wish I would have, but I really don't think I had one.
I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't look at it as a bad thing. Yeah. I don't look at it as a bad thing. I think there are times where like sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I would have did more. Like in terms of like, I don't know, just how life has gone. Cause it's like, well, why was I like this good girl for this?
Let me tell you, you can't. I feel like the whole quote unquote whole phase is for you to figure out your sexuality, what you like, what you don't like, and you can have that with one person.
No, true.
So I'm not saying that you need to have sex with Joe Blow, Kevin, Chris, whoever, whatever. But you need that space in your life where you feel like, okay, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. And you can necessarily have a whole a whole phase in a relationship. But it's like, it's not really a whole phase. It's just me being figuring out me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And I think like, I know as like a young woman, especially like growing up in a more traditional, like old school value household, like there was, or it still is, like so much shame associated with sex, right? But I hate that because it's like, again, I understand not just going out there being all willy nilly, like not being safe, but it's like, why are we making people feel shame about exploring themselves?
But I think a lot of that has to do with the time difference. It's like everything's changing. Like this is not our parents' era.
Right. It's not our parents' era. Honestly, like dating, relationships, marriage, like it don't function the same as it used to.
And I will say this, like I've had the pleasure of having parents that's not so intrusive, right? So they let me make my own mistakes. And I appreciate that because I went through whatever I learned and I know, okay, well, I got my hand burned. If I touch this, I'm not going to do that. And even as I got older, right, when I was able to make my own decisions, where they weren't, taking care of me in the sense of paying my bills, I was like, okay, well, I'm dating this guy. We've been dating for a while, or I'm moving in with my boyfriend. They were like, well, you know how we feel about it, but at the same time, you are paying your own bills, and you can do what you need to do. They never really popped up and was like, let me do this, let me see what's going on. They never really was too much in my business. They kind of respected me as an adult for me to be like, hey, the Bible says this, but this is what you're doing. So I do respect them a lot for that because I feel like if you hold a child too close, then when they get some type of freedom, they're going to be out there doing what they want to do.
Or close up from you.
Or close up from you because they feel like every time I tell you something, you have this judgment, like you're judgy. There have been some instances where it's like they are judgy, but at the same time, I have to make my own decisions. And if I did everything that my parents told me to do, I'm not gonna have my life. Like I'm not gonna be living for Keisha. I'm gonna be living for everybody else but me. So
I think that's something like, especially the last few years, like I've been learning, if that makes sense. Because like I feel like my parents are the ones that are like the Bible says this and like blase blase. And so like I've had to like unlearn that and like relearn, like at the end of the day, like this is my life and like I have to be comfortable with the things that I do.
It's crazy. It's so weird because you know how your parents and your grandparents say, don't do this and don't do that. But in reality, you had a grandfather that had a whole nother family 2 streets over.
Baby, families.
Families got all these kids and stuff just because there was no such thing as social media. So they can literally have a family 10 minutes down the road and you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You would be going to school with your stepbrother or sister and would not know. And that's crazy to me.
That's why I say like times are just different for like, because it's like, honestly, I don't think people are like doing different, right?
It's just everything's out in the open.
Everything's out in the open. And like I feel like as a generation have learned not to be like so shameful and quiet about everything.
Right.
Like, I feel like this is more of a generation that fortunately can be a little bit more real, like about what's going on, what's happening, like, because again, I think like a lot of this stuff was happening before.
Yeah, it just wasn't talked about.
Wasn't talked about.
It was not talked about. It was not talked about. You were considered disrespectful if you talked about it. You were not a lady if you talked about it. Like, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole about like clothing choices and, she's wearing that she asked for type situation. Like, clothes are clothes. Teach your child to be an adult or to be respectful of others. But like, so much has changed in the world, and it's up to you to change with it. And I'm not saying it's all good things that change, but like, you have to change your mindset and kind of be open-minded, because if you're closed-minded, then you're never going to, further yourself in certain situations. So I know there's some things that I talk to my mom about, because as I've gotten older, we've become more of a friend type situation. And I teach her some stuff. She's like, girl, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I was like, yeah, Mom, like, you gotta do that. And I'm happy that I am blessed to have her in my life and have that type of relationship. And, I feel like now as we get older, the roles are reversing. And we're going to talk about that, parenting your parents.
Parenting your parents.
But, it's just, like, if we talked more about sex, or if they talked more about sex, or if we were more open, there wouldn't probably be as much cheating. There wouldn't be so much infidelity. There wouldn't be so many divorces, or there would, like, we have just to be open and be real. Like, if you can be real with this person that you're trying to spend the rest of your life with, niggas is living a long time. Like, I have to be comfortable with you. I have to be comfortable, not just sexually, but like awkward silences, not talking, like financially, like what's going on with your life? Do we need to go to therapy? Like, do we need an outside opinion? Like, what's happening? So sex, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. But we are talking about sex, baby. So we talked about transfer of energy. When is it too soon? Body counts. Let's talk about what is having sex versus being in a relationship. Like, why do we feel like we could be so comfortable with having sex with somebody versus I don't want to be in a relationship with you?
Because I feel like there are different areas of compatibility, right? Like, just because you're sexually compatible with someone doesn't mean that like you're compatible in other areas with them.
So do you keep your options open and date other people while you're having sex with this person? Or like, what?
I mean, I think you should. Like, if you know in your heart of hearts, like, this is not my person, then like, don't close your options off.
What if the sex is so good? And it's like, if I start talking to this other person.
Well, see, at that point, I feel like you have to fall back from the other person, right? Like, if you meet somebody to where you're like, okay, this could potentially be my person, like, you're gonna have to stop.
But then it's like, yeah,
it's sticky.
All right, so what if you like, okay, there's a lot of words. So what if you like having sex with this one person and then you start dating this other guy that's getting serious, but you're not having sex with him? Or do you have sex with both people? Or do you just like, how do you know? I mean, some people do, some people don't. Some people just do the one person type situation. And why is it always the A shit dudes that got the best? The best beats. And you be like, I could change them. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Or maybe if I squint my eye.
Girl.
That
goes back to what we talked about in our first episode. Like, you can't change people. And like, you just have to accept them for what it is. I think some of it too is just like being very honest with yourself. Like, what is it really about that person that you like?
What if it's just the D?
If it's just, I mean, if that's what it is, that's just what it is. But you got to accept that. Like, you can't be like you can't ride a relationship off of sex. You can't ride a marriage off of sex. You know what I'm saying? So,
there are a lot of people.
No, there
are a lot of people.
But I also feel like those are the ones that be a hot mess when you really like get down to the details of their relationship. It's like, okay, y'all, sex is great.
But what else?
but you also the one that's like low key can't stand him because let's say he can't get his finances together or he doesn't really truly treat like you have other areas of needs that clearly aren't gonna be met or aren't being met.
So
If y'all like start off, I feel like with sexual chemistry and energy, and that goes right, and like somehow that leads you to a relationship, but other things fall into place and are compatible too, then like, okay, yeah, I can see that happening. But like, I don't think you can just like straight up from a long term relationship, like ride that off of sex.
And the sad part is a lot of relationships are like that and they are blinded by the sex.
Yeah.
Or like if the situation gets too good, like too serious, and that person will throw in sex.
Yeah.
Or they will love bomb them or something like that. And then it's like, at what point do you open your eyes and be like, wait a minute, this nigga or this person, they're not doing what they do supposed to do at home. They're not taking care of me. They're not taking care of my needs mentally, financially. Like they don't care for me, but you know, when the going gets up, they're like, hey, you know, you gonna have sex or something like that, and then you forget about the issues that's going on until the next problem happens or the next problem happens, and it's like you're in a vicious cycle, and it's like, well, I'm too deep in to get out. I'm like, no, you are not.
Get out. You can always get out.
You can always get out. That is crazy. So, I guess. Like, are there time frames to situationships when you are just having sex with somebody? Like, what is the time frame? Like, when is too long?
That's a really good question. Like, when is too long?
Yeah, like when is too long?
Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Because again, I believe in the exchange in energy, right? It's like at some point, I feel like somebody is gonna want more. At some point. Whether that's with you or somebody else, but like some dynamic, like I don't know, I feel like some dynamic at some point is gonna have to change.
Yeah, because you can't just continuously just be like, oh, we're gonna have sex.
Yeah,
some type of feelings is gonna get
right.
There's like love, animosity,
right, like
jealousy.
I feel like if you are having like sexual relationships with someone for 6 months, for a year, like some feelings are bound to come into play. Now, whether or not you take those feelings to like the next level, that's a different thing. Like, rather y'all decide to go into a relationship, but it's just like, I really don't know, man or woman, like someone who can long term consistently have that type of relationship and not catch some sort of feelings.
Yeah, this is true.
And so that, I guess, when we talk about like sex and the exchange of energy, like it is risky having sex with people because you form attachments.
Yes. And super gonorrhea is real. You gotta be safe out there, y'all. Safe sex.
Yeah.
Okay, well. So, okay. What is your definition? Is it better to have good sex or good intimacy?
I think good intimacy.
Why is it?
And I don't know, maybe I'm speaking for I'm speaking for myself, but for me, like, again, good sex can only get you so far. I feel like when you talk about like, if you can't talk to that person, should you really be with them? Like even the practice of like discovering what you like and what you don't like and tweaking sex, that's a very intimate experience. If you can't do that with that person, like y'all don't really have the intimacy part of it. You feel me? Like, you know, the sex could flow and it could be good in that moment, but like, even just think about, I mean, and I haven't had a baby, but like, I hear about like all the changes that like women's bodies go through.
It's a lot.
So it's like, you gotta have someone you can talk to about that stuff too. Like, even like, I feel like your sexual language will change throughout your life. Like, what you might have been into in one period may be different from what you are into in this next period. You may have a kink in one phase of your life
I'd be like, girl, my back hurt. I can't do this.
And then have another kink in another phase of your life. But it's like, if you don't have someone that you can have those intimate conversations with, like at some point it's gonna stop. So I feel like intimacy is more important than sex.
Yeah, that's my go on it. I feel like the song that's been stuck in my head, side note, been ass over, let the coochie breathe. Dog, so the way that she's singing it is so much better than me than how sexy is. And like, girl, look, don't come for me. Don't come for me. But I think it's like the church vocals.
Yeah.
So funny. But anyway, you can go to Pound Town and the feeling of sex is amazing, right? But after it, you're like, damn, this thing just got up and left. Like, you gotta get a hot towel or something. Like, I would definitely love, after it, we cuddle, we talk about it, and then we go on about our day. Like, you able to give me a kiss, before I'm going to sleep at night or before you going to work, or maybe I can get a hug, or like intimacy could be like, oh, he slapped me on the butt, just because, it's just something that we play around with. Like, so it's just like a different level of a love language, basically. I feel like you can have sex with, I don't say anybody, but anybody can have really good sex. And also with the intimacy aspect of it, if that person's not 100% at the sexual level that you want them to be on, because you have that intimacy, you can basically train them, talk to them, and then you guys can get there.
Yeah.
And if they aren't there, another question, if that person, if you love them and you have the intimacy and the sex isn't what you need, is not getting you there, what do you do? Like, do you just suck it up and be like, for the rest of my life, I gotta have this, he's not getting me there? Do you break out the toys? Do you be like, well, have that conversation, be like, well, maybe I think we should have an open relationship? Or like, what is it? What do you do? Do you...
I mean, I feel like, it varies from situation, right? Because like, why is he not meeting your needs? Like, you have to talk about it. Because it may simply be like a miscommunication. Like, I was talking to this guy once and we weren't even like intimate. Like, we didn't have sex or anything, but like we started talking about the subject of sex. And we got on oral, right? And he was saying, he was like, up until a few years ago, like, I really didn't even know what I was doing.
And that's a thing.
When I went down on a woman. But he was like, he actually like was dating a woman that like told him and taught him. And he was like,
shout out to the girl who taught him.
And she was like, well, not she. And he was like, now, like, I know what I'm doing now. And so it's like, it could simply be like a situation like that where it's just like, you just got to talk about it, give a little bit of instruction. And then that same person where you're like, oh, he's not doing it for me, could be the same person that turns around and blows your mind.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if y'all talk about it, you do instruction and all of that, and it still ain't going nowhere.
Writing manuals that like, this is the hole you need.
Tell you. I don't know. I haven't faced that, but
you guys go to our Instagram and please comment. Yes, let us know. We will ask questions. You guys, please answer the questions.
So what's the question?
The question is, if your significant other is perfect or as close to perfect as it can be in every category but sex, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
What have like examples?
Please, and we will share.
We're gonna share.
We're gonna share some stories, because I know that there are a lot of stories out there for people who feel trapped, and it's like
not trapped.
But you know what? There are a lot. There are a lot of people that are in relationships that feel like, oh, I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied, and I'm afraid to talk to him about it because I don't want to hurt his ego. Yeah. Men's ego is a thing. Fragile.
It'd be so fragile, like so fragile.
What I don't get.
We're gonna get on a whole different subject.
But I just one thing, like a man. You know what? Never mind. Continue.
We're gonna get on a whole different. That can be a whole different episode.
Oh man.
I was actually talking about that the other day at a at a little gathering because it was one man at the gathering, like two women. But like we got on the subject of men and women, and he was like, we were talking about how women are emotional, and actually we were talking about like, because he was saying like basically he can treat a woman really, really good and not want a relationship, meaning like he can do like he cooking for you, he like taking you out on dates, but he may not still want a relationship with you. And so he's like, and when I like say that, he's like, a lot of women end up like hurting their feelings. And like some of the women were like, yeah, because women are emotional, like we get attached and blah, blah, blah. Like if you're doing all these relationships type things. And he was like, well, actually, he admitted, he was like, men are just as emotional as women. Like, as much as they try to like hide it and act like it's not a thing, he was like, they are just as emotional as women. And like, shout out to him for being honest, because I really do feel like men, some days I'll be like, y'all more emotional than women. It's just that y'all aren't as in touch with articulating it or being vulnerable. Like it doesn't come as easily to them.
Right.
I have a question. So you've been in a pretty long relationship, not just like your marriage, but like counting how long you've been with your husband. Do you think that your sexual relationship has changed like from what it was when y'all first met? Like
Absolutely. 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 One, we were younger. And we weren't as open. As the years go by, because we've been together almost 10. We were together for about 6, 7 before we got married. So it's more so as you're my favorite person at this point. Like you could get mad at me, you could not understand, but at the end of the day, you're there for me, I'm there for you. Let's talk about it, let's figure it out, because it's just it's not going to work. Let's see somebody else type of situation. We're going to talk about it. So in the beginning, it was more like, oh, I'm scared. I don't know how he's going to approach a situation. I will say this. He's very open. Like,
shout out to the Libras.
Oh, Lord. Libras.
Gang.
Anybody that is with a Libra, I will pray for you. I know how they are.
You love it here, though. Look at you, married to a Libra, doing a podcast with a Libra. Bitch, you love it here.
Girl, put your no cheers. No cheers. No cheers. My daughter is a week from being a Libra, so I guess. Anyway.
Yep, she was trying to be a Libra too.
She wouldn't try hard enough. And I'm here for it. But when we first met, he actually talked about stuff that I didn't talk about, like stuff that I was uncomfortable with, because you always have that thought, like, I don't want to seem like a hoe.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to seem like I had so much experience. So I feel like as women, sometimes we downplay stuff, or sometimes we feel like, I don't want to do that because blah, blah, blah. And in reality, I want to try that, but I don't want to tell you I want to try it. So we took kind of things slow. I don't know if I never really believed in the Libra signs or whatever signs, but the more I got to know him, it's like, this is really a Libra. Like the way that he acts and balance and like everything has to be a certain way. And I won't get too much into it, but his upbringing kind of tailored the way that he thinks. So when we first started dating, it was more so like normal stuff. But as we got older and figured out each other, our likes and dislikes, we started doing things that, we want to experiment in a certain aspect. And I feel comfortable enough that you have my back and I have your back and there's no judgment, that I can ask you, hey, what do you think about this? Or you can come to me and be like, hey, I was thinking about this, and I not feel a type of way about it. Like, I'm not thinking that you out here doing, damn, you asked me about it, well, who you doing that with or whatever, or I'm not so insecure, where it's like, you did that before, so do I have to live up to those expectations of something that you did before? Because it's not that. Like, we're not bringing his past from, like, I know about the stuff that he's told me, and of course nobody's going to tell you everything, but I believe that he's told me a lot. And I'm not comparing myself with what that he had, because apparently he with me. So
not apparently.
So it's like it is not easy in the beginning, but over time, like it becomes easier.
But see, I feel like for me, that's like when I say like I guess held back and like I didn't go through my whole phase, which we already talked about. Like I use that term loosely, right? Because like you say, you can be with one person in your whole phase. It's just about like trying new things and stuff. But like I feel like
and I hate that name, but like experimental phase.
Right, experimental phase. Okay. I feel like that's one of the things. It was like for me in my mind, I wanted to have one person that like I really got to like explore with. And like you said, talk about the things I want to try, talk about the new stuff. And so it's like, I think that's beautiful that like y'all have reached that point in your relationship that you can do that. Cause like, that's what I'm like, I hope whoever that person is that God has for me, like that is what I would ideally want. Like, I want to be able to do the things that like I've thought about doing or like, oh, I didn't even know that was
now, mind you, we had some conversations in the beginning and I was like, this mother, why would you even ask me something? But I had to internalize it because if you, and it was never on some, I'm gonna do it anyway. Yeah. It was on some, what do you think about this? Yeah. And I had to be adult enough to understand that he came to me with a question, a concern, a comment, whatever, and then I have to internalize it. And I'm the type of person that I'm gonna, in my mind, think of all the scenarios before I blurt out something. Because once you say something, you can't really take it back. Like, and Libras, remember everything.
Sure do.
Everything.
On this day at this time.
Everything. Oh my God.
We want some clarity.
Girl. Goddamn elephants.
We are.
I hate that.
Especially when it's like people and things we care about. Like, honestly, sometimes I hate that about myself because, like, when I really care, I remember everything.
Everything.
And that shit behind me. I'd be like, but he said this. Why is it different now?
Everything. I'm like, oh my God.
I thought you didn't like that, Keisha.
Right.
You said in 1997.
And this is why I refuse to lie. Like, I will not lie to you because one of all my memory is shit. So, and I know you're gonna remember more than I do. So I'm not about to do that to myself. I'm not about to be in a doghouse for some stuff that I say. So I'm just gonna tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I will say that the shit sounds like flowers and roses and stuff like that. Like, oh, that's beautiful. But it was a journey to get to certain things. And and I will say that I wasn't really an open-minded person. And I'm not saying that he out here like, oh, we should blah blah blah. But it was just like simple things, like stuff, whatever. But you have to hear your person out.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And I just again, I was only married for under 3 years, but it's like I could only imagine like how over I say lifetime, but like over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years with a person, like how your needs could like change and fluctuate. And honestly, like what you said when you were, say, 23 may be different from what you say at 40, right? Like it may change.
And these last, let's say 4 years. My baby just turned 3. Of course, you're pregnant for 9 months, right? Mm-hmm. My sex life has changed. Like if it's sleeping or sex, I want to take a nap. Like I'm tired. Yeah. I am tired. So that's another thing you have to go through. Like when in the beginning it was all fun and games. Like we can stay up all night. We can go, have dinner at 9 o'clock. If I ain't out eating at 7, I'm not going. I'm not going. We can stay up all night, do this. Girl, put the mattress on the floor so the neighbors don't knock on the door. The neighbors don't knock on the door and go to town. Now it's like, the baby's sleeping. We got 30 minutes. What are we doing? So it's like still being able to understand that and getting what you need, or like not being upset because maybe this person fell asleep because he been working nights for like 5 nights and doing all this other stuff, and it's maybe and then it's like, okay, well, the baby's gone for this weekend. Sometimes the baby's gone for the weekend and I still be going to sleep. So sex changed with time, and I know that once she gets older and situations change, then we'll get back to what we was or whatever. And I'm not saying that sex life is terrible. It's wonderful. Yeah. But it changes with everything.
Yeah. And then I think even too, like, I know for me, like, as my own like self-image has changed, like I feel like that changes like some things with sex for me too. Like if I'm not feeling as confident, it's not as easy for me to like put on lingerie and feel sexy for you, right? Like it's different.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, I just think about all that and I'm like, whew.
And that's a big thing. Like sometimes women have even men, like we battle with self-imagery, right? Mm-hmm. I was the biggest I've ever been when I got pregnant. Of course, granted, I was pregnant.
Right.
And I just didn't feel like myself. And after I had the baby, I had a cesarean. I had a scar and I had extra weight and I didn't have this. And it's like, do he still find me attractive? And it's like, does he find me attractive, or is it that he's tired because of the baby? Like, so it's like so many things going on. Do I have postpartum depression? Like, and
did y'all talk about it?
We talked about it, and he was like, I don't see you no different. My wife is still beautiful. Nothing on you has changed. And he was like, it's more you than me.
Yeah.
Like, still look the same to me, but it's like, and body dysmorphia is a real thing. Like, all right, guys, that is it for this episode. Join us next week. Don't really know what we're talking about, but we will have some fire topics and some even more fire food. All right.
Yes. Check us out, Patreon, Instagram. Make sure you follow us. We'll put all the info in the description box below. All the info is in the description box below, because I know there's always somebody that's like,
y'all ain't put it.
Yes, we did. Go look.
All right. Bye.